Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of the Media Row podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Miller. Happy to have you guys along here. As always, make sure to go out to our YouTube page, subscribe there, subscribe, comment, rate at wherever you get your podcast to follow Media Row. And then on Twitter, follow us at Media Row Pod so you can get up-to-date coaches interviews, player interviews, and much more on Twitter. And then on TikTok, follow at Justin Miller on air for clips from the show and some other fun things we do there. Always appreciate your guys' support. We wouldn't be here without you. So continue to grow these numbers. We need your guys' help, and it's been amazing. You guys have been awesome and can't wait to just see where we're able to take this. So before we jump into today's show, do need to do a few housekeeping things with thanking our sponsors who make these shows possible as well, in Stevens Automotive and Sales and Kelly's Little Nipper. Make sure to get over to Kelly's Little Nipper. Use that keyword in Woodley and your first drink is on the house. When you go there, make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you. We have a lot to get into, as always on Mondays. We have Drake football to break down, which it's felt like it's been 2 months since we were actually at Drake Stadium being able to recap a game live. And then we have Iowa State. That will not be as fun of a conversation. It will be a harder conversation to have because they just fell to their first opponent of 2025 on the road against a tough Cincinnati squad. And then we'll end the show with some national headlines. Some teams that did not turn out to be the team we thought they would. So a lot to get to in today's show. Let's just start with the game we were at. The Drake Bulldogs take down Valpo 41-0 in a game that never felt in question. Drake did everything they needed to do against one of Pioneer Football League's worst. Drake 2-2. Valpo falls now to 1-4. And before we really dive deep into this game, I want to just hit on a few quick stats that I found interesting. Number one, this is the fourth straight victory for the Drake Bulldogs over the Beacons. 2, it's the first shutout Drake has had since November 2nd, 2024, where they won 19-0 over Marist. And this last one's the biggest one because I think it speaks to where the whole athletic program for Drake is as a whole. We've talked time and time again on this show that Drake is in one of its best positions it's ever been in. It is almost a golden era for Drake basketball, men's and women's, volleyball, softball, both men and women's soccer, football, which it's been a while. When I was growing up, the football team had a few good seasons, but not a stretch like this. And it all starts with who is at the top. Brian Harden, the people he's been able to hire to ensure that Drake does not stub their toe is incredible. Starting with the football team. The run Drake has had these past few years under the leadership of Todd Stepsis is nothing short of amazing. Todd Stepsis wins back-to-back PFL championships. He leaves to go coach at UNI. 25 starters and redshirt seniors leave along with him. And you're losing guys like Finn Claypool, who goes to Fresno State. Guys that not only racked up the awards, were leaders in the box score and stat sheets, but they were a voice for this team, a face of the team, off of the court, off of the field as well. And what does Brian Harden do? He goes out there and he finds a coach in Joe Woodley, who then goes out and finds his own staff in first-year offensive coordinator Kyle Kemp, first-year defensive coordinator in Adam Cox, who we'll talk about. But they ensure that this football team isn't going to slow down, stub their toe. They lose 2 back-to-back games against top 15 FCS teams on the road. No one in their right mind saw them lose those games and said, all right, Drake's football season is over. No one did. No one did. And what does Drake do Saturday? They go out there and they start for the third straight season 1-0 in the PFL. brand new system, brand new staff, brand new athletes on the field, and Drake doesn't miss a beat. That's a credit to Joe Woodley. That's a credit to Brian Harden. That's a credit to just everyone in the Drake athletics department. And so with Drake winning 41-0 over Valpo, I want to start today with the opening post-game message that Joe Woodley had with me up in the press box after they improved to 2-2.
It was the challenge all week, and really, as I talked to these guys, and really it's no different in any game. You want to start fast, and we didn't do that, but I also said, hey, bad things are going to happen. We've got to pull together. What's your body language going to look like? How are you going to respond, to adversity? And I thought we did that for the most part. Didn't play the best first half, but we weren't bad. We still went into the halftime with a 13-0 lead, and definitely I thought we were controlling the line of scrimmage for sure on the defensive side of the ball. Our defense played their they played. I don't know if lights out is the best way to put it, because believe me, we'll find some things that we need to get corrected. But they were really good, and they answered the call because they've had a rough couple of outings the past 2 weeks, and it was nice to see them get back to what we think that they are capable of, and and even playing a couple new guys in some spots, and thought those guys stepped in and did a heck of a job. But the way we started the second half was kind of the way I was hoping we'd start the first half. I told them we were going to take the wind in the third quarter, because I know you probably don't feel it much up here in this press box, but that wind kind of mattered down there, and maybe you saw it with the kick game. And so we wanted to get the win, and I said, hey, we got to get to a 3-possession lead. As I said, once we get to a 3-possession lead, there's no way that team was going to come back on us with the way our defense was playing and what the wind was doing. So we got that pretty darn quick. With Jacobs' interception, I didn't even see it. I was looking down the field because I knew they were going to pass, and just making sure. And we were covered up pretty good in the back end, and then all of a sudden I heard the crowd go crazy, and then I just saw Big 90. I saw the back of Big 93 running into the end zone. So that was just a great way to start the second half, and from there. I think we deflated their sideline, and then it just became pretty academic from there on out. And of course made I don't even know if I'd call it a tough decision, but I just felt like we needed a spark on offense, and I just didn't. I'll be honest, I wasn't sure if Chase was quite ready, but before the game started, and in practice this week, he looked fine, but he wasn't the Chase necessarily that I remember before the Upper Iowa game, and again, that's no indictment on Chase. He's a hell of a player. He's a leader. He's going to be fine. I just think there was, I don't know if rust is the right way to put it, but Logan has had some really good moments in the past couple games, and we just decided to go that route there in the second half, and gave us the spark I think we needed, because Logan's ability to run the football really stresses defenses, and that's quite honestly that's how we got our run game going, because when he started running it, it opened it up for the other guys, because maybe they were keying in on him a little bit. So, but yeah, that was a decision I just felt we needed to make, and certainly ended up being the right one. And that's not to say Chase wouldn't have come out and done some similar things, but still just trying to make sure he's getting back to 100%. It was good for him to get out there though, and he did some good things too. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure we'll go back and look at it, but just real proud of really everybody, and great sideline, hell of a crowd. It was a pretty darn good college atmosphere in Des Moines.
So now let's start to break down this game. Man, feels good. No, we've been able to break down the South Dakota State and South Dakota games, but it just felt good to be back in that press box. And a huge thank you to everyone at the Drake Athletics communication side of things, as well as Coach Woodley, for being willing to take the few minutes out of his day to come up into the press box after the game and chat with us. But to start off, when kickoff hadn't even begun yet, we're just watching warm-ups, and I see Chase Spellman in full gear. First thing I write down on my note sheet. And to be honest, the first thing I thought we'd talk about coming into Monday's show. Well, the first thing we're going to talk about to break down this game is not their quarterback one suiting up and playing, it's going to be on the opposite side of the ball. The Drake defense was incredible. What Adam Cox said to them, I don't know, but it lit a fire because they did everything they needed to against the PFL's worst offense. And they responded to their opportunities handed to them. And as I started off this interview with Joe Woodley, I said Adam Cox deserves the game ball.
Coxie, he's been on edge, and you throw in a bye week in there. He takes this stuff really personally, and we haven't played our best defense. We were fairly competitive against South Dakota State, but the South Dakota game, I think kind of that run game got going downhill on us, and they got some big plays, and we just didn't tackle very well. Things that, for the most part, you can control, and we just didn't. We weren't with it for one reason or another on that day. We had moments, but and he takes it so personally, and that tells me we've got the right guy in the right spot for that, and maybe we'll see him smile a little bit more around the office. But believe me, he'll be locked in by as soon as we put this one to bed tomorrow and turn his attention. He's just a very intense guy, and I was happy for him and really all the defensive coaches and of course the defensive all the players on defense. And I told the team after the game, when I was a coordinator, I'd buy donuts for the defense if we ever had a shutout. So hopefully he's picking up some donuts for the boys tomorrow after for meetings.
So let's talk about this Drake defense and their performance against Valpo on Saturday. All week long, we talked that Drake needed to respond to the opportunities that were going to be given to them by Valpo. Valpo, a team that has struggled with turnovers. Can the secondary that has so many question marks on it these past few weeks for Drake turn over the ball? The defensive line, can they get pressure on an offensive line that has struggled to protect their quarterback? Well, the Drake Bulldogs and first-year defensive coordinator Adam Cox, they answered the call. Going into the game, Drake needed turnovers and pressures, and what did they do? 7 total sacks. They only had 3 going into the game. That is the most since nearly a year to the day, since October 5th, 2024, where they had 6, interestingly enough, against Valpo. They had a special teams blocked punt. They drew 3 interceptions on Valpo, the secondary response to the criticism, including a big man pick 6 from On. And specifically with that secondary, a player that stood out in my eyes was Mikey Mangialardi. He was great. 4 total tackles, 1 breakup, 1 interception. But the thing that isn't going to show up in the box score for Mangialardi is his vision and his ability to jump routes. You could see him all over the field, just very steadily and calm, being able to pinpoint where the quarterback was going to throw. Saw the quarterback's eyes better than Valpo's wide receivers did. Drake held Valpo to just 105 yards, held him to 3 of 15 on third down. And now, since we've seen what can happen to this team when the offense clicks, like they did against Upper Iowa, now we've seen what happens when this defense carries the load, like we did this past Saturday. Now it's just a matter of time before Woodley and this staff gets them clicking all on the same page. And then you have to sit there and think, why not? Why not the Drake Bulldogs to win a 3rd straight PFL championship? If it all comes together, it is really hard to count out this Drake team, especially with the defensive performance like we saw this past weekend. I thought Drake played incredible defensively, and that was one of my biggest concerns going into the week. We talked about it with Coach Woodley. Woodley said it in the post-game interview of how he was keeping Adam Cox up at night. He was really stressed about it. He's been upset. He even joked saying maybe we'll see him crack a smile. But Adam Cox deserved the game ball. The mentality and the play calling that took place on Saturday was incredible. Made both quarterbacks for Valpo uncomfortable all game long. So now let's get into what we thought would be the leading story of this game, and Drake's quarterback 1 in Chase Spellman. So first off, we saw him fully suited up everyone in that press box gets excited. You're sitting there going, all right, it's been over a month that Chase Spellman has seen in-game action. And Chase Spellman, if you remember the last time he started for Drake, he had 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. Can he do that again against a defense that has struggled with Valpo? You also saw Xavier Washington Sr. suiting up, which that just makes you confident in the team's health as a whole, because both quarterbacks had been out. A lot of the load was given to Logan Inagawa. But man, this offense, thank God the defense performed the way they did, because that offense came out sluggish. Slow start. You just never really felt like they had a feel or rhythm to the game. Spellman was okay. 10 of 19, 128 yards, 1 interception. And with that interception, you could tell with that throw, he's not 100%. Because he had been utilizing the sidelines all game long, which isn't a bad strategy. When you have wide receivers that are versatile and good as Jackson Voth and Hank Foley, you can almost pinpoint where they need to go and they will get to their spots. And what I like about them utilizing the sidelines, and I wrote it down in my notes in game time, of you're utilizing the sidelines so that you can break out a big play, a big throw to Hank Foley, who's been explosive on those post routes, or someone as shifty as Jackson Voth can gain separation and break out a big throw or big reception. Or when the running game has been struggling as much as it has, when you utilize the corners, that secondary is going to kind of open up in that middle, where maybe it allows you to get deeper downfield off of the legs of your running backs. Well, it just never happened. And with that interception, he throws it towards the corner, and it just kind of lofts up in the air. Didn't have the bullet speed that you're used to seeing from Spellman. And Spellman sits in the second half. Now, part of it, when it happened, before I talked to Coach Woodley, I'm thinking they just feel comfortable with this lead. The defense has been carrying the load all game long. Logan Inagawa has been a very steady quarterback for Drake, even as a freshman. He played against 2 of the toughest opponents Drake will see all year. Let him go out there and get more game reps. That's what I thought. But then, after speaking with Coach Joe Woodley, and as you heard in his opening post-game interview, maybe we have a mid-season position battle on multiple levels, starting more importantly with the quarterbacks. You heard from Woodley. It's nothing against Chase Spellman. He's clearly not 100%. In Joe Woodley's words, he said Chase Spellman is not the player that he was against Upper Iowa. So I haven't heard anything else, but in my mind, I go, and what I've seen, I see him at like a 75%. Now, you have Inagawa, the true freshman, that has just looked poised every time he steps on the field. And on Saturday, no different. 6 of 7, 56 yards, 1 touchdown to Foley in the air. Add on 43 rushing yards. Now, you can put an asterisk because late in that game, he was probably going up against most of the backups. But now, and we'll ask Woodley about this on Wednesday's show when he comes on, if you're having a mid-season position battle, is it better to go with a 100% healthy true freshman Logan Inagawa who looks poised, looks like now it's to the point where you can really open up this playbook? I know Woodley had mentioned in previous interviews that he felt like Kyle Kemp felt like he needed to have it be real simplified for Logan. Now I don't think he has to. I think he has shown time and time again he's more than capable of leading this offense. So is it better to have Logan Inagawa at 100% that you can start putting more on his plate, or to have Chase Spellman at 75%? My opinion, I would have Spellman start next week against San Diego on the road. If that first quarter and most of that second, if the first half is similar to the first half we saw this weekend, maybe it's better to just put Inagawa in to have a fully healthy quarterback, put more on his plate, and allow Spellman to rehab whatever he needs to get back to more of that 80-85%, because he didn't play bad at 75, but you allow him to just get that extra rest. And then I feel like more will open up for Spellman. We'll hear more about that midseason position battle on Wednesday from Coach Woodley. The other position battle I want to talk about, and this is more of the overarching concern that I had following a 41-0 loss, because you know me, I'm going to nitpick. Even if it's a 41-0 loss, I'm going to nitpick. And I'm nitpicking this run offense. I don't know what is the issue, but Meisinger and Woodson just haven't been able to get going. And I don't know, is it the vision from the running backs just isn't there this season to start? Is it an offensive line issue? Because the offensive line and pass protection is one of PFL's best. They don't allow a lot of sacks. Man, Spellman, Inagawa, Xavier Washington, when he played against South Dakota State, they had plenty of time more often than not under center for Drake. And then when the running game comes into play, it just gets blown up in the backfield. Meisinger and Woodson, nothing going right for them against Valpo, a team that had allowed over 200 yards per game on the ground in the last 3 weeks. Running backs averaged 3.3 yards per carry on only 106 yards on the ground. Meisinger and Woodson, nothing going, just 40 total yards on the ground between the two of them. Then you bring in a third-string freshman running back named Nick Herman, who just breaks out. Again, you can add an asterisk because he's more than likely going up against role players, but still, he's a true freshman running back making the most of his opportunity. 7 carries, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 7.6 yards per carry average. So now do you have a midseason running back position battle? Is Herman better at navigating this offensive line on the run game than Meisinger and Woodson, the veterans? Or is it an issue at the offensive line that just needs to get fixed? That's another question I don't have the answer to, but hopefully we'll hear Coach Woodley have the answer to it on Wednesday. So the Bulldogs improved to 2-2. Valpo falls to 1-4. Drake, again, just did everything they needed to against a bad Valpo team. 41-0 game, never felt in question. I think a lot of Drake fans, if you ask them what were the main things you wanted to see going into this game, number one, you want to see them get back into that win column. And against Valpo, a team you've consistently beaten, you want to just make it comfortable. Make it where there's no stress, and that's what Drake did. 2, you wanted to see Spellman play, and he got in there. I think he played fine. Still, you're seeing, though, he's not 100%. And then finally, you wanted to see that defense go out there and perform the way they did. And they more than exceeded expectations in my mind. So the Drake Bulldogs now next week will hit the road to face 3-3 San Diego, who just fell to Marist 19-14 this past Saturday. Should be a fun one. Do have an announcement, though. It gets everyone, doesn't it? At one point or another, you're going to catch it. I have a fall wedding. I have one of my best friend's weddings on Saturday. So I will try to post as much as I can. I know we try to be the main place for all of your Drake football, basketball stats, updates, instant reactions. We try to get there as soon as possible. I will try my best to be tweeting all throughout this wedding. I'm going to try for you. I'm going to try, but fall wedding got to me. So Drake improves to 2-2. Should be a fun one next weekend in San Diego. Those games are always close. But let's move on to the other local team that played on Saturday in the Iowa State Cyclones. Iowa, of course, on a bye. But the number 14 Cyclones, while Drake was able to get back into the win column, Iowa State gets into the loss column for the first time. losing in a game where the final score looks a hell of a lot closer than the game ever felt. 38-30, a loss at Cincinnati. And I'll start here. I'm not shocked by the outcome. I'm really shocked by the performance by Iowa State. I know Conradi's out. I know Jeremiah Cooper, Jontez Williams are out. Those are huge losses, especially when we're going to talk about this defense and the way it performed. Jeremiah Cooper, that's an NFL player you're losing. Jontez Williams, hell of an athlete, you're losing. And those are leaders, too, that you're losing on the field. But in my opinion, there's no excuse. 3 guys should not be the excuse to the sluggishness, the poor mentality that Iowa State played with early on in this game. Iowa State goes down 31-15 at the half. They were down 17-0 at the end of the first quarter. The defense was horrendous against the rush. Gave up 260 yards rushing, 7.6 yards a carry on the game. In that first quarter, at the end of it, when Cincinnati was on top 17-0, Cincinnati averaged 13 yards per carry. Awful. And just trucking over guys. Missed tackles. Poor execution. That's on coaching. That's not on the 2 injured secondary players. And then you have the Cyclones, a defensive line that's had its ups and downs all season long. Really, the only consistent defensive lineman has been Dominic Orange, but he's banged up after that win against Arizona. He still played, but Cyclones, 0 sacks. Second time it's happened this season. The first time it was fine because it was against South Dakota. They dominated that game. But this one, you saw what happens when you don't get any sort of pressure in front of the quarterback. Brendan Sorsby is a talented quarterback and never felt uncomfortable. Brendan Sorsby, 13 of 25, 214 yards, 2 touchdowns, add on 65 yards on the ground. Just plenty of time in the pocket, could do whatever he wanted, pinpoint accuracy against a hurt secondary. The injuries matter, but when you have just the sluggishness of this defense, and they just didn't seem to have that game time want from an outsider's perspective, it shouldn't give any excuse to a 17-0 deficit in the first quarter. You're the 14th ranked team in the country going up against an unranked team. That's on coaching. That's on coaching. Now, Cincinnati is a very good team. Playing at Cincinnati is a hostile environment. I learned that from 2 years ago. Iowa State, when they won in Cincinnati, I was able to interview Rocco Becht after that game, and he talked to me about how you lose that's a game that now every player has in their mind of, all right, we survived Cincinnati this time, but that is a stadium on our radar. You've always heard of other Big 12 stadiums being just as hard. Cincinnati kind of hides in the shadows until you have to go there. And then to finish up our deep dive before we kind of start the uncomfortable question with Iowa State, I thought Beck played fine. He was the reason I picked Iowa State to win this game, and I thought he did everything in his ability. 30 of 48, 314 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But the running game wasn't there. Hansen got banged up. And just when you don't have any help on the opposite side of the ball, makes it really tough to win. And Iowa State made it a game. Felt like Cincinnati allowed them to get into the game more than Iowa State made it a game. But regardless, Beck almost led the comeback, and there just wasn't enough time for an Iowa State offense to go shot for shot against Cincinnati. So let's get into the uncomfortable conversation now with Iowa State. And I think it's easy for Iowa State fans to overreact, but I don't believe this is an overreaction whatsoever to ask the question, is Iowa State overrated? Iowa State, after losing in the fashion they did at Cincinnati, what's their best win? For you to make an argument to me that they are a top 25 team in the country, what's their best win? Is it Kansas State? Because I think that looks a lot more like when LSU beat Clemson at the start of the year. Everyone was saying that's a huge win. You beat Kansas State, a team that was favored in a lot of people's minds to win the Big 12, and that team is not the team we thought they would be at the start of the year. I saw someone comment, it's Arizona. Arizona was undefeated, and Iowa State handled them at Jack Trice, but were they truly one of the top Big 12 teams? I don't think so. So that leaves me with Iowa as Iowa State's best win. And if you remember that game, Iowa was without their starting running back. Iowa State needed a game-winning field goal to win that game, and it's against an offense that still has passing issues, that still struggles to get the ball downfield. So yeah, Iowa State should win that game. And with a weaker Big 12, a conference that a lot of people wanted to see get a multiple bid into the college football playoffs, it's not happening this year. And now with the rest of the schedule lined up the way it is and the way the teams are performing for Iowa State, you must win out if you want any sort of shot at the Big 12 title or getting into the college football playoffs. Iowa State doesn't have a great win on their schedule now. And after the performances against Arkansas State and Cincinnati, you start to lean more to maybe Iowa State just isn't the team we thought they would be. I still have faith in Rocco Beck. I still have faith in Matt Campbell. I think they will get this team competitive where they're in every game. It's not out of the realm for them to run the table the rest of the way, but it's going to be a lot of pressure up there in Ames for Iowa State. Now let's get into more of the national headlines, because we had two teams lose on Saturday that really shook up the college football world and also just made it where these are not teams we thought they would be. Let's start with Penn State because, man, isn't it just so fun to talk about James Franklin losing games? Doesn't it just, it's such an easy conversation to have. It's like talking about Iowa and issues on offense, isn't it? We see James Franklin do this time and time again, but not against a winless team. We've seen James Franklin struggle to win games, but never against a winless team. The scoreboard is going to tell you that Penn State lost 42-37. I'm here to tell you Penn State got manhandled that whole game against UCLA. They were down 27-7 at the half. So now instead of can't win the big games, James Franklin and Penn State just can't win? First top 10 team to lose against a winless team since 1985. This is a Penn State team that was the second favorite team to win the Big Ten, was the highest ranked preseason team out of the Big Ten. A lot of people had them winning the Big Ten. And now they may not even sniff the Big Ten title. They may not even sniff the college football playoffs. It doesn't sound like there's really much hope in that building. You listen to James Franklin in his post-game conference, defeated man. You listen to Drew Aller, and there's just frustration, as you would expect. Penn State, 27-7 at half to UCLA, who's without their head coach. They have an interim head coach. They fired him for how bad UCLA has been. Penn State makes it a game, but 42-37, similar to Iowa State, that is not how the game felt. The second team I want to talk about in terms of frauds is Texas. 29-21, they lose in the swamp against Florida. It was 22-7 at one point in this game. And attention goes on Arch Manning, which it should. This was a guy put on a pedestal. This was a guy that was going to run the SEC, win the Heisman. And everyone in their right mind said, well, pump the brakes. Let's see how this guy plays. He hasn't really proven anything. Thought he played okay against Florida. 16 of 29, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But the fans' patience are growing thin over there in Texas. If you are put on that pedestal like Arch Manning was, this is a game where you don't have 2 interceptions. You have 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, and 300 yards of passing. And, by the way, you win. That's what you're supposed to have. And I'm not stamping the fraud on Arch Manning. I'm stamping it on actually the opposite side of the ball with the defense. The Texas defense I've been hyping up all season long. If you're listening to the preseason shows, I was saying this was going to be arguably one of the best defenses in the league. And they go down 22-7 at one point against Florida, an offense that has been inept for 3 weeks, an offense that has been turnover happy. If you get a finger in Lagway's face, he's turning over the ball. And what does this Texas defense do? I have question marks. I have exclamation points, like 5 circles around it. 0 sacks. 0 sacks against an offensive line that's been putrid, against a non-threat running game, and then against a quarterback that is turnover happy. And they get 0 sacks. And then they allow for a freshman wide receiver in Wilson, who showed signs of Williams and Smith from a year ago as like, that could be a freshman. If the NFL draft allowed him to just go one and done, he could be in the first round if he performs like this. 111 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. I'm stamping the fraud on Texas and double stamping it on this defense after that performance. Brutal. So signed, sealed, delivered. The frauds through, what is this? Week 5 is Texas and Penn State. No Power 4 wins yet to this point. And now it's going to take a lot for me to get back into that mindset of seeing these teams in the college football playoffs. So that will do it. Whew. Got a little heated there at the end. Drake beats Valpo. They'll play San Diego next week. We'll have it here on the Media Row podcast. You can hear more about the Valpo game and just previewing this weekend's game on Wednesday's show, as we have Wednesday with Woodley on the Media Row podcast. Before we wrap up, though, today, make sure to go check out Stevens Automotive and Sales at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 35 years of family owned and operated here in the state. They are family to me. They would be like family to you guys. Great communication, no BS in that building. They just want to make sure your car is ready to go and you're safe and ready to go on the road. Best place to go for any of your car needs. Wonderful, wonderful people. Easy people to go and support. So go over there, 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. When you go to Stevens Automotive and Sales, make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you. That'll do it for today's show. We will see you on Wednesday for a brand new edition of the Media Row podcast.